Hi everyone, and welcome to the 2017 CodeTalk series. The CodeTalk series is co-sponsored by ODTUG and IOUG and provided by Oracle Developer Advocates. Today's webinar is Get Your Money's Worth Out of Your Database and will be presented by Chris Saxon of Oracle Corporation and Patrick Barel of Amis Services. If you have any questions at any time during the webinar, please type them into the question box and they will be addressed during the presentation. The presentation will be recorded and is available to everyone through the CodeTalk page of the ODTUG website. Welcome, Chris and Patrick, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thanks, Karen. Thanks for introducing us. As you say, we're going to be talking about getting your money's worth out of your database. As I'm sure many of you will know, Oracle is not necessarily cheap, but it has a lot of really cool, great functionality, and I think Patrick's got a lot of hidden gems that you can find out about, which you can use to make your applications better, just make your life easier when working with Oracle database. And to start off with, I understand we're going to talk about something related to a problem you sometimes have with calculated values. So sometimes you've got a table with one column whose value depends on another or two others. So if you've got like an invoice line, the total price might be the quantity times the unit cost or something like that. And this can be a bit of a pain to work with, can't it, Patrick? Because if you update one of the values, how do you keep them in sync? Triggers aren't great, and it's tricky to get your code to do that. So I understand you've got something we could use in these situations. So
yeah,
what's it all about?
What you could of course do is create a view, but that would mean introducing a new object into your database. But the Oracle 12 database, I think it's 12, yeah, they've got something like virtual columns. If I were to create a table like the M table, but this time I have an extra column here, which is income, and it's generated always as a calculation, what you said with, in this case, it's the salary and a commission, if any. This column is being added to the table as if it were a normal column. If you insert some data, you'll see all the records showing up. And notice though that I insert all the columns except the virtual column, the income column. Because if I do that, Oracle will show me an error, insert operation disallowed on virtual columns. Because it's always generated, you don't have any access to it for adding data. If I do a select star, you see the income column showing up with the calculated value, salary plus commission, if anything is there.
So this is, like you say, you could have a view. So this is a bit like creating a view over the top, instead of pointing people at that, but instead it's actually part of the table definition now.
Yeah, it's in the same object, same table.
Okay.
As you can see, I did a select star. I don't really like people doing select star from any table, because if I change the table, then stuff might break if you don't use anchoring, etc. So just to make sure people don't use select star, I create a new table with a column, blow it up. It's generated always as 1 divided by 0. And as we all know, 1 divided by 0 is not allowed. So if I put in some data and I do a select star, then I'll get the divisor is equal to 0 error. But I can still access the data if I know all the column names, and then it'll show me everything I need to know. So this way I can prevent people from doing a select star from a table.
That's kind of a neat little trick there. It could be a way to teach someone a lesson, I guess, if they are desperate to stick with select stars. I'm not sure I'd want that in my production database, but it's a fun little thing. So
for development, you can always do stuff like this.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So next up, sticking with the topic of columns. So you talk about invisible columns. Normally, when you do a select star, you'll see everything in the table. So invisible columns change this a bit. So why don't you tell us about these?
Okay. So let's create a table which has a couple of columns. I am the invisible man. If I put in as some data, I select star from my table, it shows me all the columns. I am the invisible man. If I alter the table and modify my column, which was maybe not the best name at this moment, the column name invisible, and make it invisible, if I then do a select star from show, it'll only show me I'm the man. So it shows me all the columns that are visible. If I know all the column names and I use that, I can still access the data which is in the invisible column. Okay. So it's there, but not for everybody, just if you know the columns in the table.
Yeah. So that's some slightly confusing syntax, like modify invisible, invisible. It reminds me, if you've got a nullable, a not null column with the default, and you want to make it nullable without a default, you say modify null null, which is also a bit of a mind bending, isn't it? So
yeah, but it's for the sake of argument.
Yeah.
Had to come up with something.
Exactly. It's fun though. So I guess you could use this for things like if you wanted to add or remove columns and you weren't sure that it might break an application, say you weren't sure someone had been using select star,
right,
then it wouldn't appear in your application, so all your code would continue to run.
Right. If they use anchoring, etc. And just modify it to invisible just before you drop the column.
Yeah, I guess that's it, because dropping columns is you can't roll back, can you? So it's, I guess, modify it to invisible to give people a bit of a grace period to update their code before you drop it for real.
Right, right.
Okay, so I see you talk about performance. You know, we probably get at least one question a day, probably more than that on Ask Tom, where people are talking about SQL performance, how can I get things faster, you know, why is my query slow, and all sorts of lovely things like this. So I understand you've got a couple of features you talk about which might help with that, enable your queries to run faster. Can you talk us through those?
Sure. We've got the query result cache. Let's say I created a table. It's a simple table with just an ID in there, and I insert some values in there, 5 in this case, and then I create a function. It doesn't really do anything. It just sleeps for a second, so I can see what happens. If I set my timing on, and if I select very slow function with all the data in the table, it executes in just about 5 seconds, which makes sense. 5 records, 5 times asleep for a second, and that's the timing you get. If I were to say result cache this, then my execution time goes up. Why is this? I think, but I hope you know the exact answer. I think this is because Oracle is filling up the cache with the values of this query.
Yeah. So as you say, when you first run it, there's nothing in the cache, so it's got to populate it, and it takes that little bit extra. And this can be a bit confusing, can't it? You put something in to cache it, and it took twice as long. But I'm sure you'll show us what happens next time round. This isn't going to last, is it?
No. If I run it another time, it takes me almost no time. The 0.935 seconds is probably just the network traffic, which always takes up some time. So the first time you execute the query, it takes a bit more time. In this case, about twice as long. Well, actually, almost exactly. No. But the second time and third time and fourth time and every time after that, it'll take you almost no time.
Okay.
The nice, let's change this a bit. Let's change the function a bit and make it deterministic. And I don't know why this happened, but if I call the query again, it takes me about 5 seconds the first time, just by adding deterministic to the function. Why it isn't 11, I don't know. Second time, it takes me almost no time again.
Okay, so there's a nice little optimization there. Assuming your function really is deterministic, of course, because if it's not, that's a slightly dangerous thing to do potentially. But
yeah,
so,
but deterministic, you can lie on deterministic.
Yeah, that's
but it's not. You're not supposed to do that.
It's a bad idea. I mean, the potential danger is if you do something like create a function-based index using that deterministic function. Now the values that returns can change, but the values in the index are still the first time from when you create it, and so you can end up with a situation where the index gives you the wrong values, and this is because you've lied to Oracle. You've told it something was deterministic when it wasn't. So yeah, make sure your functions are deterministic or use with caution. So it's
But the best thing about result caching, it is cross-session. If I were to run the function first, it would take me 5 seconds. If you were to run the exact same query after my execution, you would get the benefit of running it in almost no time. So let's say we create a function result cache table. We put in a couple of values. In this time, just 3 unique values. I create my function again. It's very slow. Well, let's say you are the one with the tie. That's nice. The other one's a woman. Now we got 10 records. It takes about 10 seconds. And if the other person runs it again, it also takes 10 seconds. Now I create it as deterministic. The function is deterministic. I run the query again, and it takes me about 4 seconds. I got 3 unique values in there. It takes about 4 seconds. And for the other person, the same. Now I create the function as result cache. So the function result cache takes me about 3 seconds, and for the other person, it takes me no time. So the function result cache is cross-session.
So this is pretty cool. So as long as, if you've got things that you're executing really frequently, so you've got that very so function, lots of people are going to be calling it. This is a way you can reduce the overall overhead for a one-off hit there.
Yeah, the great thing about the result caches in Oracle is Oracle knows when the underlying table changes, and when the underlying table changes, it invalidates the cache. So you don't have to do anything about it. It'll just, oh, okay, the table's changed, I have to run the function again or the query again. If the table hasn't changed, it can use the cache it has.
So this is, if your function has a SQL query in it, and it's kind of expensive, or you just need that function to be really fast, is the case you're describing here.
Yeah, but it's either if the function is slow, or no, you can use the function. No, if the function is based on the table, that's it. That's what I wanted to say. If the function is based on the table, if the table changes, Oracle says, okay, I have to rerun this this function or this query. And if it's the same, it just uses the cache. So use this for stuff you rarely update but query frequently.
Okay. No, that's cool. So potentially we've got, so there's kind of two ways we could get performance gains. You could get it at the query level with the query result cache, or the individual function level with the function result cache. So we've got two techniques we can use here. That's right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right then, so that's something cool. Let's move on. So this is a problem which I've encountered in the past. So you have some data and it's changed, and users have phoned you up and kind of saying something's changed and gone, but I don't know what it was. Can you get it back, or why is it changed, and so on. And this can be a bit frustrating, right? So I understand Flashback is a technology that will help us here. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah. What we actually want to do is we want to know what the data looked like at a certain time in the past. We cannot still not look into the future, but maybe that'll come in a future release. I don't know.
One day.
Nah, we can do some of that. What we used to do is create journaling tables, just save all the data, save the changes, and we could rebuild whatever values were in the table at a certain point in time. If you're using flashback queries, well, let's create a table. Let's insert some data, and then if I do a query, I see the values as they are at this point in time, right? If I were to update the data and I run the query again, I see the new values, right? That's how it always works. Now there's this other dude who's running the exact same query, but he sees the old values. And why is that? Have you got any?
You've not committed yet, haven't you? This is like reconsistency. So
right. And then I do a commit. If the other person runs the query again, he'll see the new data. That's how it's always been working, right?
Yep.
Okay, let's truncate the table, insert some data again, run the query, and update it. And that was strange. See the new data, do a commit, and now I want to know what the data looked like before I did a commit. Can I do that?
So you want to look back in the past. You want to see the history.
Yeah, I can of course do the counter update salary minus 200, but suppose I don't know that. I want to know what the data looked like a minute ago. I can do that by selecting the columns from my table as of timestamp, and then the timestamp I'm interested in. In this case, I'm using timestamp today 1 minute ago, and then I'll see the data as it was a minute ago. See the 2650 over here.
Yep, got it.
If I know the SCN, system change number, then I can use that as well. See the data, what it looked like at a certain system commit change number. I can get the system change number by using this query. So always execute this query before you do an update. Now that's
so we could get the exact point before the update. So this is really cool, because like say sometimes you get users they've updated the wrong thing, or they think they've updated it but they're not sure, and they kind of phone and say, what's gone on, what did the data look like in the past? So we can use this and look back to see how it was before they ran their update.
Yeah, and if you got enough storage available, then Oracle says they can guarantee to check back about 100 years. I don't know how they tested this, but normally it's about 15 minutes or so.
Yeah. So that's the default, but as you say, if it's using the undo information. So if I hate to think how much storage you need to go back 100 years. It'd be absolutely colossal. That would. But,
that's what they say.
The database Oracle hasn't even existed for 100 years. It would be quite impressive to see that. So.
Yeah. But yeah, so if you got enough storage to save your undo and undo files, then you can go back way beyond the 15-minute limit. That's actually standard.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So this is kind of useful for those kind of oops moments, or you're not sure what's going on. But sometimes you do actually need to keep a full history record. So things like when people move, you want to be able to keep their address history. So things like maybe your marketing team wants to track how people have moved so they can target them with campaigns, or maybe your finance team need to know where people live so invoices tally up and things like that. So Temporal Felicity is a feature which can help with this, I understand. Can you talk us and explain a bit about how this works?
Well, Temporal Felicity, let's say I create a table with some customers in there. It's got an ID, a name, and an address. Let's populate this with some data, my address, and Steve's address, which is not correct, but okay, he lives in Chicago. If I query that table, it shows me whatever's in there, what I just put in there, right? That's how we normally do stuff. Now let's say I move house. I sometimes do that, not too often, but let's say I'm moving house, and I know I'm moving in about a week or so. Well, it's easy to update my new address to 1 Oracle Lane and see the new value in there. But this is instantaneous. So I'm moving like a week from now. I tell you my new address. You put it in, and actually the customers table has the wrong information. I'm not there at this moment.
Yeah.
Well, if I recreate the table, if I alter the table, add a column, or actually 2 columns, the period for valid time. What it actually does is it creates 2 extra columns, which don't show up when you do a describe.
So these are the invisible columns that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, but if I change my query and I explicitly ask valid time start and valid time end, it shows me the extra columns over here. Now, how does this help me? Well, I can update the table and add an end date. This was last week.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I update the record and say the record is valid until the 23rd of March. Do the query again and see the data there. Now I can insert an extra record which has a valid start, valid from the 24th.
Right.
Run the query again. You see that I now have 2 records in there with my name, my ID, with the different addresses and different valid periods different periods where they're valid. Let's see.
Yeah. So we're keeping the full history of your your changes, so we can see where you lived in the past and where you live now, where you might live in the future if you're phoning us up and saying you're moving next week.
Right.
Cool.
But this doesn't. Oh, this is pretty much standard Oracle. What I don't want to do is change all my existing code to reflect all these changes.
Yeah.
And enter temporal validity. Let's say I execute DBS Flashback archive enable at the current time. And the current time was last week, so sorry, didn't change that. If I then run the select again, nowhere clause, it shows me the record which is valid from the 24th and Stephen's address which is always valid. If I change the data, the valid time to the 23rd, I can see what was in the table or what was valid on the 23rd. So it's my old address.
Yeah. Okay. So Oracle's kind of generating a where clause for us, so we don't have to, essentially, which is that's kind of handy.
And we can always see, show me everything, and we get the 3 records back.
Okay. Okay, so as you say, this is a way you could build this into your application. You need to capture this history, but you might have, who knows how many queries accessing this table, and you want to get them so that they all show at a particular point in time. That's cool. I think it's... Go on.
What you would want to do, however, is make sure your primary key includes the valid period in some way, because as you can see, I now have 2 ID of number 1.
Yeah, great point. That's you're probably going to have to go through and change all your primary keys at the point that you enable this, aren't you? So that's just something to bear in mind.
Yeah.
Okay. I think this is kind of cool. I like this, and I think it's worth noting as well. You can also use, like we saw with Flashback query, we can have a similar syntax for temporal validity. So you can say as of period for valid or whatever you called it.
Yeah.
So there's 2 ways we can approach this, which is really cool. Okay, that's nice way to simplify our queries and so on. Data security, great. So we've all seen the news, haven't we? It seems like every other week there's a major company there's a big story about how they've leaked loads of data, and this always annoys me because why aren't people caring enough that this is real people's information? I mean, you might say with things like the Ashley Madison, maybe they deserved it, but there was VTech, the toy maker. They also leaked a huge amount of data about a year ago as well, and that was all these kids' information, which is kind of horrifying, really. So I think data security is really important. So can you talk to us about what we can do to help make sure this, our company's not headline news?
Well, to make sure that you're not headline news, you have to lock everything down. But what I can do is, let's say we have a single database and we have different customers working in there, putting their data in there, like this. We got some people who are accessing the blue records, and we have a different group of people who are accessing the orange or yellow or whatever color records. It's in the same database, same schema probably, but I don't want them to be able to see each other's data. I can of course create different views for different people, but that would mean creating different applications for different groups. And
yeah, I guess.
Let's say I don't want that. Yeah, let's say I don't want that. What I can also do is create a virtual private database, or fine-grained access control, or row-level security. I think this is one of the features in Oracle with the most names. in there. But let's call it VPD. What we do is we create a function that will return an extra predicate which gets added to the query executed. The function has to have this. These two parameters don't have to. They don't have to have these names, but they have to be a varchar, two varchars, and in the first one it's Oracle sends in schema name, and the second one table name. So that's what I use for them. Then in this function you create an extra predicate which gets added to your query. So I do a select from the emp table, select from emp, and it just adds where department number in 10 or 30 if I'm business user, and department number in 1020 if I'm like maintenance person. And if I'm neither one of those, then I'll just get to see everything.
Okay.
Now,
so you could set up. So that if you've got some admin users or super users who can see everything, you can restrict customers so they can only see what they're supposed to, but you, maybe as a development team or DBAs, could log in and be able to see everything, which would help for debugging and stuff like that.
Yeah, but there's also a privilege exempt policy something. I'm not sure what the exact name is. So you can grant that to your development user, but you can also make your escape like return value equals 1 is 1. How do you add this to your this policy to your table? By issuing the DBMS RLS, role of security, add policy. First up is the what object schema. Where does the object live? In this case, in my demo schema. What's the name for the object? MVPD. What do you want to call this? Give it a name so you can always use this name to remove or change the policy later. So absolutely give it a name. Then there's what the schema is, where the function is you're connecting this to, and what the name of the function is. See, I just give it the name, and Oracle just adds the 2 parameters to it.
So that's the function you created in the previous slide?
Yeah, in this one. VPD func.
Yep, cool.
If I do a select and I'm in the group that gets to see the 10 and 30, the department 10 and 30, it will see 9 rows, and these guys, they're blue. If I'm in the other group is issuing the exact same query, I see a completely different set of rows. So I can use the same application for different groups of users, but the data will reside in the same schema, and they won't see whatever's in there for each other.
Oh, that's handy. So that's good, like you say, the situation, if you've got different customers using the same app and you don't want them to see each other's data, or I guess you get things as well within a company, only certain people are allowed to see things like people's salaries and so on, so you can restrict that just to HR staff or something like that, so that you've got a separate table there storing that information, only those people can see that information.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so kind of finish up. There's a whole bunch of nice little additions in 12c to the SQL syntax. So I understand you're going to walk us through a couple of those.
Yeah. There is some special SQL features. Let's say we want to retrieve the top 3 earning employees. What most people do is create a query like this, and then say, well, and I want top 3, so the row number should be less than 4, and it gives me a result, which is not correct, because the order by is the order is done on the result set. So I'm just selecting 3 rows and doing an order by on them. So what you would have to do is create an ordered list of the employees and then select the top 3 of those. That's how we do it at this moment. Well, actually, I like to write it like this with a query factoring, which is nicer, newer, and more readable, I think.
Yeah.
Oracle now says, well, you can just select the columns and fetch me the first 3 rows only.
Okay, so it's much easier to write that there, isn't it? We've got like what 7 or 8, 9 lines on the left and just 5, 6 on the right. So
yeah,
much easier.
It's a lot less, but it's just syntax candy, because Oracle rewrites this to this.
Yeah. Still, it simplifies the code, just makes things a bit easier to work with, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Suppose I want to use to get the next 3, so the top 4, 5, 6. I would have to create a very a complex query then, and then ask for the row numbers between 4 and 6. And in this case, Oracle says, well, just offset by 3 rows. The first 3 I don't want to see anymore, and I fetch the next 3 rows only.
Yeah, okay. This is kind of nice, because like you said at the start, with that row num, it applies the order by after the where clause. It's the kind of thing that catches a lot of people out.
Yeah.
I know one of Tom Kite's most popular articles is actually about how row num works and how all this is. So hopefully we've got an easier way now, so to not catch newbies out so badly. So this is kind of cool.
Right.
Okay.
Next up, I think it was also Tom Kite who said, if you can do it in SQL, do it in the SQL. If you can't do it in SQL, do it in PL SQL, and otherwise you're screwed. Now,
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. But as you know, when we're changing from the SQL engine to the PL SQL engine and back, it's called a context switch, and it's very, very costly. Oracle always works on simplifying this, making it faster and faster. But now in 12C, we can also create PL SQL in our SQL statement.
Right.
We can. Let's have an example. Create a function called wavy, which does uppercase, lowercase of the string you put in. And if I am to select that, I see the data. This time I get all the context switches. In this case, about 28. One to the PL SQL engine and 1 back to the SQL engine. Now, if in the 12C, I can create the exact same function inside my SQL statement.
Right, I see. So this is local to your SQL statement now?
Yeah, it's local. It's fast. It still does some bit of context switching, but it's a lot faster than the other way around. And I get pretty much the same result. Well, not exactly, because if you look at it, in this case it's Smith with a capital S, and in the other one I started with the lower S, but okay.
Yeah, it's the same principle, isn't it? Though, I mean, I know this, so my colleague on Ask Tom Connor, this is name formatting is something that he always runs into, because he's Connor MacDonald, which is capital M, little c, capital D. And of course, if some applications end up formatting that incorrectly, because they either put everything after the initial lowercase using init cap. So now we can create this like little local function to format names correctly, which is kind of handy.
Yeah, I think it's very nice. The downside is this function is local to this SQL statement only. You cannot reuse this function in a different SQL statement. Well, you can, but then you'll have to copy all the text to the other SQL statement.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're going to create a function that you want to use in a lot of places, you've got to trade off the performance benefits versus the maintenance costs, haven't you? Here,
Right,
I guess.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Still, if performance matters, or I guess sometimes you just need those little utility functions to, let's say, help with formatting, or maybe do a simple calculation. And this can really help.
Maybe you'll just need a special formatting for like a report or for this query only, and well, then you're it's probably better to use a local PL/SQL function in your SQL.
Yeah, that's cool. So I think that's. Did you have anything else for us? That was a lot of cool stuff you had. Okay, yep.
For now.
So yep, just something I wanted to share with you. So I'm starting a new free 12-week bootcamp to help people get started with SQL. So it's called Database for Developers. It starts on Monday, so April 3rd. It's a fully online course. You can take it at your own pace. So we estimate up to 30 minutes a week, but you can just register, take it at your leisure. So got the link there in the bottom. Check it out. If you know anyone who's starting out with SQL, then feel free to share it with them. We think it was a great way to help people get started. Okay then, so I think that's everything we had. We got some time for Q&A. If anyone's got any questions, please put them in chat and we will do our best to answer them.
I'll just run the credits for
Do we need some music at the set point to do the credit?
Nah, but it's
Chris,
nice
do you
if you
have
use
access to the questions box? There are some questions in the questions box.
I can't see. Oh, hang on. I must have just not seen them. Sorry about that.
No problem. There's quite a few, so scroll up to the top.
Yeah. All right then. So let's start it. We've got. So one of the questions, can a virtual column be declared invisible? Yes, you can make a virtual column invisible, which I guess you might be something you want to do. You might use it to enforce a constraint or something like that, which is not relevant to your application. So that's useful. Next up, any limitations on how much data or number of queries can be stored in the results cache? And
memory.
Yeah, exactly.
It depends on how much memory gets allocated for the result cache, and Oracle does the maintenance for you if the cache is not been used and it needs the room. It just cleans out whatever's there. So it's like least recently used algorithm. To clear it out. So yeah, it depends on how much memory you allocate for this.
Yeah, so that's an important thing to remember. If if you've got large result sets, lots of functions, and you're going to use this, you're going to need to take that memory away from your standard buffer cache or whatever. So there's a trade-off to be made there. And the kind of related question in how long the result is cached, again, it goes back to basically it will stay there until it gets aged out, as Patrick says, so if something new comes along. Okay, so then we go on, actually right at the very top, miss one at the top. It says, can you put SQL into the generated as statements? This would be on the virtual columns.
No, I don't think so, because the virtual column is within the current record. You're not check anything outside of itself.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
I don't think that you can use SQL.
That's right. You can't refer to any columns outside of the table, so you couldn't put a SQL query in there. So yeah. Okay, so let's move to Flashback. So what privilege is needed to use DBMS Flashback package? I'm not sure I know that one off the top of my head. You know, Patrick?
No, I'm always DBA on my virtual box.
That's the problem, isn't it? You do this on your test things. So sorry, we'd have to get back to you about that one. Okay, so
Chris will get back to you on this one.
Well, thanks, Patrick. All right then. So we had a question: can you add temporal validity to an existing table?
Yes. The short answer is yes. The long answer is yes. You just add the columns as I've shown you.
Yep. Yes, and someone was asking about primary keys, which we addressed. As we said, you've got to go through and change those probably, which something to be aware of. Okay. We've got one about temporal validity. We can see more than one record for each person. Can this handle primary key on ID? Because they might... Yeah, so that kind of goes back to the primary key question again. You're going to have to go through and make sure your constraints support all of this. Okay.
Right.
Okay, on to virtual private database. This feature is very nice, but a lot of web application logs into the database as a single user ID. So where does this feature work? So they all come in as the same database user. So if we wanted to, could we split them up somehow?
Yeah, you can use context. Probably the current session is using some sort of context or anything else which is for this user only. You can use a context, you can use the username, whatever you want, but find it in like your context, and then use that in your VPD function.
Right. Yeah. So as long as there's something you can define to mark how you want to segregate the users or applications, like say setting a context is one way to do that. Okay, so it doesn't have to be on user. There's other approaches you can take.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on, can we call a stored function inside the with in PL SQL of the SQL? So
no.
I'm guessing
it's not stored. It's the function is really just there for the duration of the SQL table.
We can call that function could call another existing PL SQL function that call the function though, couldn't it?
Sure, but then you'd still have the context switch, the full context switch, so you would lose the benefit.
Yeah, kind of defeats the point a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So someone mentioning, there's also the new UDF pragma to achieve benefits of defining a function with clause but using compiled PL SQL. So you familiar with the UDF pragma?
Yeah.
So
UDF, pragma UDF makes the function faster when called from SQL, but slower when called from PL SQL. So if you're creating a function and you want to use it over and over in different SQL statements, you might go with the pragma UDF. If you're using it mostly or a lot in PL SQL, well, it slows you down. So it's a bit of a trade-off.
Yeah, it's an important thing to be aware of. So if you're using it purely in SQL, then look at it. But if you're using it in your standard other PL SQL, double check, basically.
It'll be slower.
Yeah. Okay, so that's good to be aware of. Good to be aware of. Someone just asking about that URL for the SQL thing. So I put in chat the URL for the database for developers course. So please check that out if you think that would be useful. Share it with people you know. Anyone you know is starting out. Okay, got a couple more questions. How Oracle invalidate result cache function that does not have underlying table as in your example?
It doesn't invalidate it.
Yeah, so if it's just a pure PL SQL function that doesn't call SQL, it'll be based on aging it out, as we kind of talked about earlier. Or you can manually purge it as well, but you need to take care doing things like that.
Right.
Okay. So can we have a SQL, so going back to VPD, can we have a SQL query for generating the criteria when creating the policy for VPD? For example, use the current user context, etc. to generate the criteria.
I don't think I really understand the question.
I guess you had your function where we had the where clause in two values. Could we have a SQL query in there, or a SQL query in that function to find values, to define values?
Yes, you can, absolutely. But be aware, this will give you the context switch again, and this time it will be executed for every single row that goes through the SQL statement processor. So it's not the rows that make it into your result set, but also the rows that don't make it into your result set. And I've seen environments where they do extra SQL or PL SQL in the function in the policy function, and it really slows it down. It really slows it down.
Yeah, so I guess I can imagine if you've got a largish table and you've applied this function and it's doing something complicated, that's going to execute for every single row, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
So I guess the answer is yes, you can, but test and be very careful.
Yes, you can, but you shouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Okay. So I think that's all the questions we have. If anyone else wants to put... Oh, one last one that's come in. Result cache SQL query will work with a VPD applied.
Yes, it will. In the newer versions, I know in 10 that was a problem. I think it was fixed in 11. So it makes sure the VPD is applied to the result cache. So you still won't see anything you're not supposed to see.
Okay. So you're saying upgrade to the latest version to make sure everything works?
Well, at least the latest version -1. So in 11 it works. It works.
Okay. So it works in 11. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Just a question about the database for developers class. So database developers, once the course is open, it's online, you can take it whenever you want. There isn't a fixed time. So a new module will open up each week, and then once you're registered, you can take it anytime you want. You don't have to be at a particular time. So completely self-paced, do it, take the course when you've got 15 minutes, half an hour to spare. Okay, so another question's come in. In our case, we want to limit access to database on the subscription. So I guess this is going back to VPD, and subscription information is stored in a different table. Okay, so they're looking at VPD and they want to apply VPD based on another table. But I guess you could could you build your where clause based on a subquery? Would that work in this situation? I'm not sure I understand exactly, but
I think you can, but like I said, be very just make sure the result of the policy function is a predicate which can be easily evaluated, like A equals B or something like that. No, and don't do any SQL in there. Don't say column X in select one something or other, because that will definitely slow you down. So
right.
Try to make sure it's in a simple predicate, or create something like a local associative array in which you can quickly check values.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good advice. Okay then, we're coming up to the hour. I haven't seen any other questions come in. We've maybe got time for one more if anyone wants to put one in now. Otherwise, I think we're about done. No?
Okay.
Okay, well, thanks Patrick. Thanks for showing us all this cool stuff that we should be using that can make our lives better and greater when using Oracle database. Thanks everyone who's come and joined us today. Great to see so many of you here learning about all the cool stuff you can use. If you've got any questions about this or want to know more, you feel free to ask on Ask Tom and we'll do our best to answer. Anything else you want to say, Patrick? Or?
I just want to thank everybody for listening and watching.
And I'd like to say thank you to both of you for being with us today.
Okay, yes, and thank you, Karen and ODTUG, for hosting this.
Okay. Y'all have a good day.
Cheers. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.